Hi, I'm Brandon Reintjes, Senior Curator at MAM. Welcome to another fabulous MAM Artist Talk. Tonight we're pleased to have Senior Editor of Montana Quarterly, Scott McMillion, interview artist Stephen Braun about his major solo exhibition at MAM, Hindsight and Foresight are 2020, which you can see in the background there, an installation shot. Scott and Stephen seem natural selections for a conversation tonight because they have a long friendship, and Scott's featured Stephen's work in Montana Quarterly before. We're really lucky to have both of them here, and thank you to them for doing this interview. MAM, as you know, sits on the ancestral territories of the Salish and Upper Kalispel and Pend Oreille people, and we respect the indigenous stewards of this land and really feel like their rich cultures are fundamental to artistic life, not only in Montana, but also to the work of MAM. And as such, we've got a dedicated gallery and a focus on contemporary Native artists in our collection. Now, Stephen Braun isn't Native, but questions of structural violence in all their forms really pervade the heart of his work. And you'll notice as we talk and look at some of his images that themes of colonization as they relate to extraction and environmental degradation are really central to the exhibition. Now, if that doesn't sound juicy, I don't know what does. So sit back and relax for what promises to be a really dynamic conversation tonight. Again, I wanted to echo the thanks to our exhibition sponsors, LH Project and Cultural Vision Fund. And because of the closure, this COVID-19 closure, we've extended Stephen's exhibition through September 19th. And I know you're thinking the museum's closed, I'm not going to be able to see the exhibition, but we're just now in the process of preparing to reopen, and we're hoping to be reopened by the first Friday in June. So hopefully you'll be able to stop by MAM very soon and see the exhibition in person, which is so masterfully done. He's done such an amazing job with these pieces. I'll turn it over to Scott and Stephen, and thank you very much, both of you.
Yeah, I'm Scott McMillion. I'm the editor of Montana Quarterly magazine. It's a general interest magazine published out of Livingston. We're here to talk with Steve Braun, one of Montana's preeminent clay sculptors, and his remarkable new work that's in the Missoula Art Museum through the summer. Steve?
My name's Steve Braun. I guess I made all this stuff. And that's about all I need to say about myself.
Well, tell us, you live near Whitefish out in the woods there.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in Whitefish?
No, I grew up all over the industrial Midwest, and then I moved out to Montana in '78 when I started college. And I was fortunate then because Rudy Audio was teaching, Ken Little was teaching, and they are amazing ceramic artists, and I just happened to take a ceramic class, and then
that was at the University of Montana?
At the University of Montana, yeah. That was in '78. And I was taking a lot of math and science classes, and I kept on taking ceramic classes. And then after I graduated from school, I got an anthropology degree in school. I was a visiting artist over at Eastern Montana College in Billings, and I was able to do ceramics again, and that was, I think, in '88 or '89. And I've been doing it. I always had an impediment that, wow, it takes so much stuff to do ceramics because you need kilns and all this stuff. And after that, I finally figured out how to be mobile and still have kilns and stuff.
So your studio and home are in the Whitefish area, right?
Yeah, and my studio is behind my house.
Well, let's talk about some of this work. I mean, this one, which is one of the first things that people see when they go into the show in the museum, the one called Dueling Liars, is a very striking piece. It's big. Yeah, the noses on those guys got to be what, 4 feet long?
Yeah, they're 50 inches long, maybe a little more.
Yeah. Is one of them bigger than the other? I mean, who's the biggest Pinocchio here?
One is bent. They're about the same length.
Well, who are these guys and what are they dueling about?
I was playing around with just the idea of media and our political leaders through time, and especially now, just fabricating reality and using lies. And it started a long time ago. If you repeat the same lie often enough, people start believing it. So I just had this idea that, wow, you can have these two people jousting over their lies and who has the better lie. And the one I did white and black. I've been kind of playing around with the dichotomy, the white and black play off of each other. And the one on the right is that's kind of the basis of our society. It's industry. There's a big MX missile on it with body bags. There's all kinds of stuff painted on it. There are a bunch of icons painted on these.
It looks like a nuclear cooling tower.
Yeah.
On the guy's coat.
Yeah.
And
it's all
barrel.
cracked and it's leaking. Yeah, there's an oil barrel. There's a sign for nuclear power, that orange and white one on the elbow. I tend to put icons on joints because they're just movable, and it's just visually something I've been doing for a while. And then on the other side, it's painted up with a lot of religious icons too. And they both have guns pointed at each other too, because it seems like religion, people that are religious and base their societies on religion really have no compunction about killing people. So it was just kind of playing with that idea of God being on my side, and both people think that. So then it makes it okay to kill people. So it was playing with that idea too.
It's a sad truth. How do you actually build a complicated structure like this? I mean, do you build the hands and arms and the torsos separately and then join the heads? The physical process of this.
On this one, I build mostly with coils, and I use a clay body that's has a lot of grog in it and a lot of fire clay. I raku these things, which means I'm taking them out of a kiln at almost 1900 degrees, and then I put them in an airtight container with straw or newspaper it's a post-reduction chamber, and it's airtight, and it just smokes them, and it puts a patina on them so that it makes it look like they're old. I think I got that. I like that idea because when you look at these things, they look kind of old and beat up. And I like the idea of looking at these things, even though they're present, there's just a temporal quality to our society that's burning up fast. And I want you to make it, or I hope the patina makes you look at it like this is already history. So, but I have to pull these out of, some of these things are pretty big. And when I was younger, I could pick up 100-some pound pieces when they're 1800 degrees, but I'm kind of limited physically anymore to do that.
Okay, so they come out of the kiln intact, this human figure.
Well, the torso's one thing, the hands are separate, or separate pieces, the arms are screwed to the wall, those are separate, and the heads are separate on this one too. And then the noses are out of a birch tree that died in my yard, and I milled it up, and so that's what I use for the noses. And I like the long noses because there are a lot of big eyes.
Well, yeah, they multiply, don't they?
And like, you can't really see it, but I use like these infinity symbols. I think one of the eyes is painted with a spiral. The Native American, like Anasazi, the infinity sign that we use. And I did that on the big wall piece too, with all the heads. And I've been using that symbol in different permutations or iterations for a while too. Yeah, and this is called a pyramid scheme, and it's just talking about it's dealing with just oppression of people, the militarization of our society through police, creating boundaries for people, but not for products. Like if you're something manufactured, you can go anywhere in the world. Whereas if you're a person, you're limited. And that's a really strange thing to have happened. And there's a part you're going to be walking on too, that you're going to be breaking when you walk on it too. So it's going to just add another physicality to it.
So visitors to the museum will actually participate in this piece.
Yeah.
By the act of viewing and walking on it. It's meant to be broken.
Yeah.
The piece that's on the floor.
Yeah, and that part's 4 by 18 feet.
Wow.
And that shows the foundation for all this stuff too. And it's kind of like the border wall. A lot of the factories are on the border, and there's all kinds of environmental issues from that. And then it's kind of like slavery, just to provide us with short transport and also tax cuts and things like that. That's why a lot of our corporations move overseas.
Can we talk about some of the elements on this upright thing? Let's start at the top with the eye. What's that eye? What does that symbolize?
It's just about being looked at, and it seems like cameras are ubiquitous, and people just don't really care about having every moment of their life being watched. And for me, that's really a frightening society to live in.
Did you say that people are comfortable with that, or they're not?
I think they just accept it. They don't even think about it.
Yeah.
You know, even in the museum, there are cameras everywhere. Across the street on the old Forest Service building, there are cameras everywhere. There are cameras everywhere you go now, and you're being recorded. And it just violates privacy and the ability to move around unrecorded. And that's becoming a thing of the past. And that's a really frightening thing to have people not even consider anymore. You used to have freedom, and that's a freedom. The freedom to be invisible is lost.
And this figure in the suit right beneath the eye seems almost connected to the eye, and it's very intriguing that he has he's a puppeteer. He's got a Klansman in his right hand, and what's the figure in his left hand?
It's a little Pinocchio figure with a long nose, like a liar. The way I look at it is it starts at the bottom. So if you're trying to cross the border, then you have this gauntlet of border patrol, then there are police, and then above that, it's just kind of building the pyramid to the top. You start at the bottom, and you're being watched. In the middle, on the bottom, right above the fence, there are 2 cops beating someone up, and there are body bags all around it. I've been down on the border, and they're just helicopters, they're balloons, they're the blimps flying over with cameras on it. There are these towers that go up and down, and it's really a militarized place. I was down there in, I think, 1980, and I drove across the border then, and it was amazing country. And now it's kind of like being in a war zone. You get people stop, the border patrol stop you, ask you questions, search your car. It's just really frightening to see that those kind of behaviors are acceptable or that they're totally acceptable and they become mundane. That really frightens me too.
I agree. I was down there near Douglas, Arizona a few years ago, and drove up to look at the border fence and take pictures of it. And I wasn't there a full minute before the border patrol came up and wanted to know what I was doing. And I said, well, I'm going to be here for a few days. I'm on assignment. And I said, do you need my license plate? Can you tell your other guys who I am so they're not hassling me? He said, oh, we've already got 4 pictures of you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
People look at that as security, but I look at it as frightening. So then it just builds up. There's a figure on the right, about a third of the way up, and that person has a bubble over his head, because we all live in bubbles, and he's just reaching out and touching all these other just components of society, their cars. I can't see what else is on there, but he's putting his hands through it, and then he's grabbing a gun too. There's a little bubble with guns on it too. And then, oh, go ahead.
I'm intrigued by the figure of the human brain there on the left-hand side, about halfway up.
Yeah.
What are you saying there?
I think a lot of this stuff has become, to get us to this point, there's been a lot of thought to socially engineer us. And there's just been, it's been going on for a long time, since the 60s, during the peace movement, the love movement. And it was such a threat that ever since then, they've been just trying to figure out how can we control people to protect our society. And it's really kind of a frightening thing how ubiquitous it's become. So it talks about that. And then there are a couple business people, it's just little icons underneath the brain, and they have skulls for heads. And then there's also someone playing with the computer, painted up with a 0101, because that's how you build your computer code.
So that's binary code then.
Yeah. And then it goes up, and there's the further up the pyramid you get, the fewer people. It's also about resources too. The people at the top are controlling everything too. So the person in the middle on the top, he has 2 puppets that he's creating chaos in society by supporting and promulgating ideas of hate, which is what the KKK puppet is about, and using lies to support that. And then he has his security detail too, right behind him to protect him.
Yeah.
And then there's a bubble on the figure's right, and then that's a fence because he's fenced off too. So there are really multiple layers of fencing to make our society function. Because if you're a billionaire, you are excluded from society too, through your own little protection forces, cameras, fencing. So they're really not part of society. They just run it. They're not.
Tell me how you build this. I mean, did you start with a sketch or a drawing?
The only drawing I did was like a 2-second thing of just drawing the pyramid and how it was going to look like on the floor. It was just a quick little 6 or 7 line.
You made the figures. You drew them on the tiles and then fired them.
Yeah, I once fire my things now, so I paint them all up, put glaze over them, and then I just fire them. And if I raku them, I do it. This I didn't raku because it would have been a pain in the ass. And then also, since you're going to be walking on it, if you raku your the clay, when you raku clay body, it's a lot of thermal shock put onto it because you're taking it out of the kiln at almost 2000, and if it's like 20 below zero, like, or colder up here, that's a big temperature differential, and it makes the clay kind of punky. It's not, my clay body's pretty good, but it's not as strong as just it's stronger by not rakuing it. So since you're going to be walking on it, I just wanted to make it stronger.
And these are individual tiles that you then join together.
Yeah, I mounted them on a backing, or just a structure of plywood, and I think I used 2x2s behind it. And yeah, then I have a whole system for hanging it all on the wall too.
What's it weigh?
Oh shit, lots. I think probably these 2 segments for the floor piece, they'll probably be 400 to 500 pounds each, with a wood backing on it, or the frame for it.
So there's a lot of physical work involved in your work. This is not.
Yeah, just making that crate for the bottom part. I had to make a 12-foot crate for it, and it's pretty unmanageable, and just getting it up into the museum was to the gallery up there. That was really, it wasn't easy. It was too big for the elevator. So yeah, it's very physical.
Yeah. Fascinating piece. It's hunger. We think consumption, but I think this guy he's not eating oil. He's spewing. Am I reading that right?
You know, we have a society where we consume a lot, and we consume more than we even need. And I've done sculptures on mindless consumption, where the top of the skull's cut off and there's no brain in it. We used to be citizens, and now we're consumers, and that's our place in society, which has been really a travesty to have people accept that. So this is, you know, it's kind of a play on hunger, because there's this massive hunger for resources, and this person has such a big hunger. It's a mental hunger, it's not a physical hunger, and he's just so full of it that he's just puking it out. And then he's painted up with all kinds of icons.
This is one of the most fascinating details I've found, where the human figure is sucking on an oil pipe, just gluttonously drinking from an oil pipe, and raining down the spilled oil over the earth with the greens and blues. I think that's an incredibly potent detail.
And there's also other detail too. This is like the military consumes 20% of our oil. And so that's kind of like, it's a gluttony of society, of course, but then it's also to supply our military. During one of the wars in Iraq, Saudi Arabia said, yeah, we'll give you free fuel for all your jets, and it almost bankrupted the country. And then the head next to there, oil products also make all our plastics, so that head is painted all up with plastics. And then the head on the left side of the central figure, that's all the mining, and it's kind of like coal strip. They use those big dredge steam shovel kind of things.
Right.
And they're giant. You can't, if you stand next to one, you're invisible. They're that big. And there's a current, or the top of the big bucket comes up into the nose, and then it drops down where the human mouth is the bucket now, and that's showing consumption.
And the one to the left of that, the profile figure, where that is sucking in all those electric appliances mostly.
Yeah, electrical appliances, toilets, there's all kinds of shit on there. And that's just consuming it, and then showing the oil that's like really the backbone for our whole society. Some of the past, like the Indians in Mexico, they were corn people, we're oil people. That's the basis of our society, oil.
What do you mean?
Well, like down in Central America where they grew corn, that was their lifeblood, and it created their whole society, figuring out how to grow corn. Anasazi did that. You know, they were agrarian lifestyles.
Yes.
And it provided sustenance, trade, all kinds of things. But we are a society that is totally based on oil. And without it, for us to live without it, we're going to have to radically change how we live.
And now with the coronavirus and the geopolitics, we've got so much oil that it was briefly a negative price. They were paying people to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an amazing, dumbfounding world. But this show, I think, gives everybody a lot to think about.
I've been doing all these, on this series, I've been doing all these different heads, and I just like the idea of the Hydra idea. Just a lot of heads and different aspects of people being shown by different heads.
What does the Hydra idea mean to you?
Well, the first one I did, which is maybe one we'll talk about too, it was I at different times I've put a lot of effort into issues I've had, like with logging, and you win something and then they change the laws, and you cut the head off and then like 3 more form. So this was the first Hydra one I'd done. And it's just about oil and all the things that go into it. First on the head on the viewer left, you have to change the landscape first to start getting the oil. So there are tree stumps there. A lot of times, especially, you look at the Dakota XL pipeline, you had a military force out there to try to keep the Indians off lands that were never legally taken from the Sioux tribe. So you have kind of like a little mini military to make it happen with security and everything. And then the next head has oil on it. And then I think the next one is bankers, and then banks, and yeah, I forget what else. There are all kinds of icons. When you look at it, there's just a lot of information going on. And then there's CO2 molecules floating around, and then there's some dinosaurs down and that I use graffito on. It's just painting slip on and scratching through. And then there's oil under there and oil drums.
Now, what do you call this piece, Steve?
I think it's called Infinity. Part of my idea on this is we think that we have an interesting society because it's all built on stability. Our whole economic model is built on stability. We look at life as being something that's stable, but nothing is. I mean, there's seasons, this virus that creates instability. Stability is just a concept, and we seem to need it to run our economy and to project our economic models that we follow. And so this is just each head is different, and they just speak to their awareness, the awareness of that person or personage. And
This one?
I just thought, with all this consumption, you need more than one mouth. And it's on the brain too. It's just another way of dealing with that concept of hunger. That one's just about logging. It's just really sad. Like, Montana is such a beautiful place, but yet we've left. I did a map of Montana that it's called a Montana Legacy, and I put a lot of the decisions we've made landscape wide onto a map of Montana. And there are different maps on there, or different tiles on there, because we like manage everything piecemeal. We don't look at things holistically. So this is just about all the logging that's going on up where I live.
It's very beautifully and intricately made. I mean, it's a difficult concept to think about, but it's a beautifully made piece. I really have to hand it to you on this one.
Yeah, and this one's kind of like crying smokestacks.
Next one.
Oh, this one's this is kind of about our a long time ago I did this sculpture, and it was on genocide, and it was a person painted up with all these flags of all kinds of the countries that have practiced ethnocide and genocide. and he was dressed up in military uniform with flags painted all over him, and he had like an assault weapon, and he was shooting a naked woman, because a lot of times when they go into the villages, the people it's at night and they're running from basically mercenaries, which is what our military system is. And I was looking at all these death shots that they target practice on humans with. So these are all just targets for when you're practicing to kill people. This is where you want to hit them.
The eyes are unsettling on this. They're asymmetrical and in different colors. Is that an aesthetic choice, or is that?
I was just getting kind of bored of painting the same kind of eyeballs, so I figured I wanted to start breaking up the eyes to make them just look different. And this one makes it, yeah, it's kind of an intense eyes.
Well, it's eerie. Can we look at another?
Oh, and then this one it kind of makes a swastika on the head. So, and it's just out of oil pipelines, and instead of oil dripping out of them, it's blood. And that just shows, I don't know, you can think whatever you want about that. I don't know what else to say. And then also having the eyes closed.
Yeah. Well, let's look at that triptych. What do you call this assemblage?
Well, it's 3 different pieces. When I do my slideshow, the last few I've done, I give lectures at conferences, whatever, colleges. The hate one it's the guy with dressed in red. It's a guardian angel for hate, which is kind of like, I don't support it, but it's just kind of funny that it has become, there's always been racism in our country, but now people think it's okay to be racist. They're bold about it. Before, maybe they didn't feel comfortable with it, but now it's become fine. I want to embrace it. I'm proud of it, and it's just really a strange thing. And there's hate coming out of his stomach, and there are these different icons that just show I guess support of that idea painted all over the body. Yeah, these don't really go together, but that's just how they're placed. The one in the middle, that it has multiple, it's just about, it has 2 meanings. One is sex as a tool, and also, it's used in war a lot when you're raping people, but then it's also a very intimate, loving thing to do. And this is also just a commentary on the pro-life movement, because I look at it, if you're pro-life, how could you propagate? Because every time you propagate, you're creating someone else that's going to die. So on the back of the little head that the guy's holding, there's a skull, but you can't see that in that photo.
And the third one?
I don't even know what I was thinking when I did that. It was kind of about mutation, and yeah, I don't even know what to say about that one. Probably not much. I'd have to look at it and think about it. Here, let's go back to this one, because it shows a progression. This one, I'd done this a few years ago, and it just is the process of consumption. And I think the point that I'm trying to make, well, you'll hear the point I'm making. So the first one is inhale. It's just inhaling all these objects that we think we need to support our lifestyle. Then the one to the right of that is Mouthful, and it's just like chewing them up, processing them. Then the next one is exhale, and we're just releasing all these toxic chemicals and CO2, methane, all these gases that are making our planet get warmer. And then for me, the most interesting one is the last one on the right. and that one's called, oh, I forget what it's called, but it's written there. And this is, as we get more and more CO2 in the air, well, I'll back up. CO2 absorbs in the blood system 400 times easier than oxygen. So whenever you take a breath, your hemoglobin will take the CO2 first. So as we get more and more CO2 in the air, we're going to become hypoxic. And that's why the guy's mouth and tongue is all painted purple. And he has little CO2 molecules coming out of his head. And there's a little skull with these hands holding CO2 molecules. There's all kinds of stuff painted on that you can't see. So that's where we're going, or that's what we're doing.
This is a fascinating piece. It takes up a pretty good chunk. You really can't tell from these images, but they've got to be between what, 6 and 10 feet tall.
Yeah, I think 10. Yeah, 10 or maybe. I think they could be a little taller. Yeah, 6 and 10 feet.
Yeah, and they're incredibly interesting, and I like your concept of a forest of stacks. Can you explain that for us a little bit?
I was thinking about just transforming the landscape, where you used to have trees or fields or something. Well, in this case, it's trees, and then it becomes industrialized, as we have done with all our national forests and a lot of our private forest lands. It's industrialized lands. So this is just speaking to that instead of having trees, there's just a big forest of stacks, and they're smaller on the wall to make it look like they go on forever. So it's just playing for that as a concept. And then I'll also add trees provide oxygen. These things just provide they just emit all kinds of toxic chemicals, mercury, nitrous oxide, it just goes on and on and on. CO2, methane. So it's just, I tried to make them pretty, and then each of them is painted up with different, I was doing circles on it. It's like a bubble. A bubble's like an idea to me. So these are different components of each stack. Each stack is unique, and each one has a different narrative to it. So on the yellow one on your right, viewer's right, the bottom circle are all these toxic chemicals that are emitted, and they all look like little humans. So if you look at that, they all have little arms. Some of them have arms and legs and heads, and I thought it was just really striking that some of the most toxic chemicals there are look just like humans.
And where did you find those? Images?
I was at used to teach at Flathead Valley Community College, and there was a chemistry professor that we all shared an office together. And when he left, he just left all these chemistry books, so I grabbed one. So a lot of these I've just found through looking at books.
Yeah, just the molecular structure. It strikes me that that you see human imagery in that molecular structure, and we're changing the balance of those molecules all over the world.
Yeah, and I've also done other sculptures where we're becoming a repository of these chemicals too. And some will say, well, what is that? And I said, well, you may want to try to figure it out, because it's absorbed. You've already absorbed it in you. You know, dioxin, that's something that is everywhere. It's in everyone. And if you can identify it's there, it's already too toxic. So it just speaks to a lot of that stuff. But people don't know that. And I guess I try to make them kind of pretty so they're engaging, and then maybe you can go up and look at them. I try not to, I'm not trying not to use a hammer. I'm just trying to like, just try to make people think and like look. And if people can think and look, that's, if you walk out of here and you can, if you can think about it, or if you just feel anything after looking at it, I feel I've been successful. And that's if it's anger or, you know, calmness or whatever. Whatever response is fine. I can't control that or want to.
Well, I think you've succeeded. It's a very powerful show. I was lucky enough to be in Missoula just days before the big shutdown came for COVID-19. And I mean, I've been familiar with your work for many years. And I walked in, there was nobody there, and the light came on. The camera saw me and turned the light on, and I just went, wow. And I think a lot of viewers are gonna have a wow moment when they go in, and they're gonna have more wow moments as they move about the room and really pay attention to what you're saying and what you've done here. It's really a remarkable show, Steve. I think you and the museum staff need to be very, very proud of this. Very proud of this.
This one, it's called circular logic. And what happens with circular logic is you always come up to the same answer. And on this one, it's just talking about the limited answers that we are allowing ourselves to entertain. And they're all bad. So what I like about this one is there are two of these that you spin. And this one, it spins, and you can spin it really fast. So really good bearings on it. And it always comes up with the same answer. It always ends this way. So it just is a play on circular logic and how it gets you nowhere.
Circular logic, I don't know if it gets you nowhere, but it gets you where we are, you know, which is in a tight spot. The world's in a tight space, and we've placed ourselves here.
And a lot of it's just been mindless. I mean, I just think that there have been since there's so much money that can be made, that drives everything. And, you know, I did sculptures on TVs. That's the homogenizer of culture worldwide. It teaches you how to relate. It teaches you what you want. It teaches you how to buy. Yeah. Years ago when I was in college, I came up with the idea of material objectivity. And that's how we don't define ourselves as people. We define ourselves on what we're consuming. And that gives us a status in society. And that's really kind of a strange marker of people. If you're a good consumer, people think you're powerful. And the result of that is, you know, we're going to have a lot of tough environmental challenges in front of us.
This is Brandon again. Steve and Scott, where you ended right there, I wondered if we could move over to questions and answers. And you were kind of talking about circular logic and where we are now. We had a question come in from the audience, and the question was put forth like this. You both had a background in environmental studies and environmental activism. One of the audience members wonders, what little changes can we do to make a difference, even if it's not dramatic? What are some baby steps that we can take? I don't know if you care to comment on that.
Do you want to take that one on, Scott, or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Oh, I think baby steps aren't really going to get us anywhere. I mean, babies, a lot of them can't even walk. So I just look at it as, don't laugh at that. That wasn't funny. But I just think we have to restructure our identities. And if we think about, like, some of the Native Americans look at 7 generations when they're making decisions. We do it on the quarter system. And it's just kind of a strange model for us to even have foresight of what we're doing. And baby steps would be, don't buy anything new, just buy food. Stop the chain of mindless consumption. So we have mindless extraction and mindless consumption, and that's what our economy is about. We have the biggest economy in the world, and it's because we consume the most, and that makes us powerful. And that's such a strange ideal to attain.
Well, I can say that Steve doesn't just talk the talk; he walks the walk. I mean, his vehicles are ancient, and he keeps them going. His clothing is not chic. Steve Steve is not a rampant consumer. He believes in getting full use out of items and projects, and I salute that. I wish I was better at it. Me, I buy a new pickup every 25 years, whether I need one or not. Steve squeezes out a little more than that out of it, out of his vehicles. He keeps his impact on the world light, and I respect that. So he's not just talking the talk; he's walking the walk.
Steve, do you have some grown-ass people steps? That's a follow-up question.
Grown ass, like my ass, because it's all fat.
What are some steps for big people?
I think the biggest thing is just to train yourself not to just buy shit that you throw away. I've done sculptures on that. There was a guy with a credit card in front of a trash can, and it was called Fill Her Up. And you just have your little plastic that you're buying more plastic with. And behind them, it was just stacked with all the consumer items that you just throw away. We just have to break that cycle of too much is never enough. And that's a really tough one to do, because that creates our identity. How we look is such a big creator of identity. Do I look good? What are people going to think? And I just think you got to make decisions that are bigger than yourself. And I don't know what to say, but just say no. The best thing you can do when you're buying stuff or to support the economy is just say no.
It's interesting.
And it's going to create a lot of hardship, because we're going to have to rearrange our whole economic model. But we're kind of screwed, because, our economic model is GDP has to grow every year. Well, the planet's not growing every year. It's a finite resource. And until we can look at it as we can't grow our way out of anything, we have to shrink our way back to something that's sustainable.
Yeah. I think we've been conditioned to want so much. We have to be conditioned not to want. Somebody has a kind of a follow-up question just about the place we are with COVID-19 and this pandemic. Do you see this situation we're in now as creating permanent positive effects? You've seen those satellite images from space about the decreased pollution because people are staying home, things like that.
Do you want to answer that one, Scott, or do you want me to?
I wish I could be more optimistic. I mean, it's as difficult as all this is. The one thing that I hear from everybody is that we want to get back to normal, whatever normal is. Everybody seems to want to get back to travel, consumption, using things, and as wretched as this disease is and the disruptions are, I hope it goes away sometime. But I think we're going to have a rush back to where we were.
Yeah. Thinking about how the environmental and in the political aspects of your work, Stephen, we've got a question that what's more important to you, issues of environmental or political freedom?
Could you repeat that? I'm not sure if I quite got that.
Yeah, the question is, what's more important to you, environmental or political freedom issues?
I think the environmental things are the biggest ones. And I think when I said something earlier about us being consumers versus citizens, we just were totally disempowered. And we have an economic, political system right now where the only people that get the ears of the politicians because of all the money in it are people with money. And that's the only voice that they hear. So until you get the money out of politics, they're not going to be listening to the people anymore. So I think they're hand in hand. And, politics also affects the environment too. So I just don't know. I think there's only one planet to live on, and I know people want to go live on Mars, and I just say, go for it. Just good luck. And I know it's not going to last that long, but it's like some little fairy tale, but we have these billionaires that's their joy, their childhood belief. I want to go live on Mars, and we have an economic model that makes billionaires instead of supplying food or healthcare or birth control or whatever. It's just so convoluted so these billionaires can make these things that go to Mars. Awesome. I hope it works, and if not, it's only going to be a one-way trip, so take a deep breath.
Final question, Stephen, and this is something that we've touched on preparing for the exhibition, so you might be able to recall some of those discussions, but an interest in your choice of ceramics as a medium in face of rampant consumerism, thinking about the environmental impact of clay and also creating a commodity as an artist, if you could talk about those things.
So yeah, I'm very judicious, and once I fire the stuff, the clay's pretty much hosed. It's like stuck. And I just hope, I use chemicals that are really toxic, and I use so few of them. I don't know, I kind of got suckered into the medium, and I don't know if that's really a good thing either, because it does take a lot of resources. So I try to be judicious. I try to recycle everything I can. I try to lowball everything. And I just hope that the message that I'm making, it's me being a pompous, self-absorbed artist. Oh, this message I'm making is really important, which is kind of a pompous thing to say. And then hopefully the message outweighs the resources that went into it. And if it doesn't, then, I just failed.
Well, thanks. Is there any further questions before we close out this evening? There've been few filtering through. They're coming in about 3 different ways, so it's hard to catch them all, but I think that we've been able to answer them. Scott, thank you so much, and Stephen, thank you so much for this discussion tonight. It's really great to have people discuss the exhibition like this and provide an avenue in when we're closed. it's really hard to think about such an amazing show that so much has went into producing, and then people not seeing it. So I'm really grateful that we're able to discuss it here tonight.
Well, I just hope that you can get open at whatever scale, and even if it's a small scale or a limited entry. When you walk in that room, I was serious about the wow factor, and I've known Steve's work for many years, and to see the collection of it so well presented by the Missoula Art Museum. When you walk in that room, you're going to say wow, and if you walk out of there without having your mind open, you need to walk back in. It's an incredible show. I thank the museum for doing a fine job of presenting it, and thank you to Steve for having the insight and the talent to make this possible.